everyone. We're so excited for our pop-up interview today. We have Carlen Charleston coming to us from Texas. He might have him some boots on, but we see that flag back there. He is the founder of Erase Races, and he is on a mission to bring unity to America because we are all in one race. So let's talk about, you know, you've got a purpose. We're Life on Purpose. You've got a purpose to teach people and educate people and bring us together. But how did you end up here? You didn't wake up with this on your mind. How did God order your steps to where this has become your passion?
You know, and when I look back on it, it's almost like I did probably wake up with this, you know, because when I look back on my life, I see some of the things that God has really orchestrated and how he put those things in place. When I was at the age of, I had to be about 7 or 8 years old. I remember my older sister coming home one day. By the way, she's a principal at a school now, doing very well. But I remember her coming home and my parents ripping her because she had used a racial epithet to talk about one of the white teachers. Oh. And I remember that having a very big impact on me, going, wow, that is not a proper thing, you know? And so that kind of set the stage. And so growing up in, especially at that time, I mean, because we were still in a segregated area, pretty much in Waller County, Texas. And so, yeah, that had a profound impact. But then that let me know that my parents stood for people are people, and you treat everyone with a sense of respect. And so that's the way I lived my life. And, you know, as you get older and you go to college and these things, you realize that everybody doesn't have that. They don't have that view. Right. You look at some of the circumstances of life and you look back and you go, wow, yeah, that was totally different. And so those kind of events happened. But then it was when I got a master's degree. I was working on a master's degree a few years ago that I actually had to do some research on the concept of race. And that was very eye-opening, very enlightening. And I realized that this was merely a social construct that was created and really created for the purpose of division when it was actually brought into play. So it was created and then there was an evolution. And so that's what we spend a lot of time now trying to educate people on the origin of race and where it came from. And so to that cause, then I'm doing Erase Races now.
Well, and you studied innovative leadership, which I think is a great thing because we need innovative leadership. Let's go back to being a lieutenant colonel. 20 years you served in the United States Marine Corps, of which I am very thankful, and I know our viewers are. So how did that shape? But 20 years in the Marines that's a chunk of life. So what did you learn, pros, cons, and how did that shape you as a man?
Well, you know, a lot of things, and especially along the race spectrum. One thing I didn't realize is that now that I'm really old, or now that I think that I'm old, I didn't realize how recently, when I joined the Marine Corps in 1985, how close we were to the civil rights era. You know, and I think the first idea that was very recent was I was at a base, Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and I remember one of the young enlisted people, and he was amazed at me, and he stared at me. And I said, Sergeant, what's the problem? He said, I've never seen a black officer.
Wow.
You know, and so I was like, wow. And so I wasn't really thinking groundbreaking. This was just something that I decided I wanted to do, and I did it. And so I wasn't thinking groundbreaking. But then as I, you know, spent more time in the Marine Corps, and I remember being stationed in Okinawa, Japan as a young officer, and we had some very bad things happen. And some American citizens did some very bad things there in Japan. And so the Japanese hated Americans at that time. They were very upset with Americans. And that had a profound effect on me, because what did it mean to me? It bound us together as Americans. And so by the time we left there, and I was there for a couple of years, by the time we left there, you forgot that you had this culture that saw you by your skin color. And so I left Japan, and that was 1991, and I went to Albany, Georgia, Southwest Georgia, and there was a culture shock. And I was like, oh, this is a different place. And so that's when I really began to analyze the whole race thing and went, wow, this doesn't have to be, because I had experienced different, both in the Marine Corps culture and an overseas culture where you were seen as part of the group. You're an American. You're not a Black American. There are no white Americans, no Hispanic, Latin. You are American. And so I think when I look, that was a very profound thing to me at the time.
Well, and I think the basis of what you're doing is based in education, because many people are not educated properly, and you have a lot of people that make assumptions. There's the era of fake news. There's, constant news. So how important is it if you're going to take up a cause and talk about an issue to, before you speak about it, understand it from a factual perspective?
Well, that's huge. But the problem with it is that our culture misinforms and miseducates.
Right.
And so we don't understand that we're growing up in a culture. And if we don't actively pursue education in this area, then the status quo will persist. And that's where we've been as a country for many years. And so we passed legislation in the 60s, and we've done all these things to try to offset it, but we've never done anything about the miseducation. And so we still have a cultural thought that is against all the things that we know to be right and true. And so that's very hard, because so we've got to almost do a reprogramming of both young and old, everyone. Because the reality is, of course, 2-year-olds, you put them in a room, they're going to play with each other, and they'll never know anything about differences as far as skin color goes.
Mm-hmm.
But if they stay in this culture that we have here in America, then they will, of course, grow up and they begin to diverge as they get older, and they'll understand that because it's something that we ingrain in our society and we teach, and we don't realize we're teaching it because it's part of the culture. So our task then, the education and the information, is to change the mindset, and therefore change the way of thinking and change the culture eventually.
Well, and you after you got out of the Marines, you spent 12 years teaching high school, and this is part of what's fueling your passion, is because you see a great need, whether you're in all black school or an all white school. You said we all have the same needs. How do you address? I mean, what did that do for what you're doing now? How did that prepare you for that?
Oh, it's great, because it was great in understanding that. That's why I'm so averse to when they identify grades and scores or whatever. They say, well, the black students did this, the Asians did this, the white students did this, because I said there is no such thing as a smart black person or a smart white person. They're smart people. They're smart people. They're educated people, and we've got to get away from that. And so our society does that, and because we do that, then we put in place methodologies and structures to support our errant belief. So you've got a belief that these people need to learn a different way, then we start constructing that. So now we've got different ways of teaching, different ways of interacting with this group of people, when we all have the same basic needs. And so that's one of the things I definitely learned from being at the variety of high schools, totally 2 different schools, one heavily minority and then one heavily majority, and realizing they all needed the same thing. And I was able to, the relationships that I form with the kids, because that's what it boils down to. And that's what we're doing at Erase Races. We're building relationships, because I don't need to know a black student. I need to know the student. Mm-hmm. I don't need to know a white student. I need to know the student, because they all have unique needs and requirements. And that's when you can really be a great teacher. And I think in our society, that's when we can really begin to make connections with other people, when we don't see them as this larger group, but we see that person as an individual with unique needs. And then we can meet those needs in our relationships that we build with them.
Well, and your tour that you're getting ready to take a launch once this craziness that we've got ourselves into right now is over, is to teach people that we are of a race, but we're all of one race, and that's the human race. And so you have a plan. You're planning on going on a tour to 112 to 115 cities, but you don't have just an idea. You have a plan to implement the changed world you envision. So let's talk about your plan so people can be educated about how you plan to do this. It's a big lofty goal, but it's got some teeth to it.
Yes, but I'm a Marine, so I can make it happen. Okay, so you can make it happen. All right. Hey, but here's the thing. So when I go on the tour next time, it'll be the second time, because what I did from June of 2019 to December was I drove the entire country. And that's what's really phenomenal. I said most people have an idea, because as a Texan, we're very proud of our state. Texans are. And we think that the rest of the country should be like Texas. But it's when you travel the rest of the country, you meet the people in their homes. Tell
them about your van. Tell them how they know when you travel, why you're traveling.
And that's the thing. I should have had a picture of that vehicle here, but everyone sees it because it's draped in the red, white, and blue flag, and it says the American Unity Movement. And so it was the start of many great conversations around the country. When I walk out of Walmart, everyone's got something they want to say or ask about. People would leave me notes saying, I really like this or whatever, because they would get from the logos and the graphics on the van, they understood the concept. And so that was always interesting. So some of those relationships, a lot of those relationships I still have now that I fostered that way. But what we're going to do, so I did that for 6 months, and that was phenomenal because you really did have a great idea of what is going on. How do they think in Wyoming?
Everyday
You
people
know, how do they think in Connecticut? You know, how do they differ when it comes to these concepts? Because I would sit down and have some of these conversations, and that's all that tour was for. It was to inform them that I've got a long-term plan, and I want to tell you what that plan is. And so as I began to talk to people, you know, it also triggered my brain to begin to think about other things and to think about regions who don't think like Texans, because, you know, in Texas, we're kind of all friendly and things like that. But, you know, but really to just educate the people on what I'm going to do, because when I go back the next time, then I'll have the big RV. I have a crew, because I was doing this by myself in the van and moving very fast. And I said, no one would have been able to keep up with me. Well, maybe I would have found some other Marine who could have said, yeah, I don't need sleep. Let's keep rolling. But I was moving fast because I had those 112 cities and I had, 5 months to get it done. And so I made that happen, because you don't want to be, especially the northern part of the country, in December. And so I was able to get done early December. And now we're preparing. And we'll spend the next 6 months here in the Houston area putting on some activities and events, preparing ourselves. Of course, coronavirus has stopped that a little bit. But what we'll do is we're putting together videos that we'll send out that are educational and informational. We'll start training people on those. And then once this is lifted, we'll be ready to hit the road and hit those 115 cities again. And we'll actually put on activities and events and begin bringing people together.
So we're going to change the world, which is great.
Yes.
Let's talk about the body of Christ. How do we differ? What is our role? How is our role different as the body of believers? The Bible is all about unity, and we're called to that already. So what do you say different to call up the believers and say, hey, let's be the leaders in this race, in this movement?
And that's the thing. We've got what we call areas of influence. We've got 7 areas of influence. And number 1 to me, because I am a Christian, is the church. Because the thing that I'm doing now is a responsibility the church has always had. You know, the ministry of reconciliation was given to us thousands of years ago, and we should have been doing that and should still be doing that today. And so we start with the church, because the people in the church also, they work out in the community and they work out in the world. And when all of these bad things have happened along racial lines in our country, the sad thing was that people didn't have the refuge of the church to run to, because in many ways the church was just saying the same thing that the world was saying. And so the church needs to get back to being that refuge. And so I challenge the churches with that. And the first thing that we're doing, which we're doing now in Houston, we're getting all those churches to come together, and they're going to do this electronically because of Corona, but they're going to sign up if they desire to do so. And I'm not forcing anyone to sign up, but I will tell them, this is what we commit to. We commit to eliminating the terminology that says there's such a thing as a black church and a white church. So we got to get rid of that. And then we're going to intentionally begin to work across demographics so that we can become the church. And so the church has a very big part in this. And because I tell the church leaders as well, if we can't do it, and we've got the basic foundation for unity that nobody else has, Jesus Christ, we've got the greater foundation than anyone. If we can't do it, why would we expect the world to do it? And so that's where we're starting. And the responsibility lies with the church. And, everybody is using 2 Chronicles 7:14 now, saying, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray. This is what the church should be doing. So while I'm a Christian and I'm going out talking to all types of organizations and people of all different faiths or whatever, this is something specifically the church was tasked with a long time ago, and we should be executing and working on now.
So that's great. You've got a movement and you've got a plan. What is it that we everyday people can be doing to lay a foundation for when something like what you're doing could stand on? So what are the daily habits we can be doing to breaking down barriers and creating environments where people come together and we come together and we're friends together? What are the tangible things we can do every day to be a silent movement, but one that will eventually become so obvious that you can't avoid it?
It's going to be that thing of stepping outside of your comfort zone and engaging people that are not like you.
Yes.
You know, there are people that you shun, there are places that you didn't go, and people that you didn't engage because you don't feel comfortable there.
Mm-hmm.
That is a detriment to our society when we do that, because
Yeah.
then not knowing just creates an atmosphere of fear and all those things that keep us divided.
Mm-hmm.
And so you come along with this race concept, and it just a further fracture happens, and then a situation or circumstance in our society happens, and it just creates a bigger divide in our country between people groups. And it not only does that because of skin color, but it's the same thing that happens when we start talking political parties and even denominations and things like that. So we have a culture of divide. We do. And that's because there aren't enough people. And I think that there are really a great number of people. But I think what our society and culture has done is it has made us so fearful of stepping out of our comfort zone and engaging people that are not like us. And a lot of the people, we don't know the other side. We don't know the other people. And the other people are going to misinterpret us. And that's going to happen. So we got to understand that. It's kind of like this coronavirus. One of my friends said, people need to understand they're going to get it, but it's okay. You'll get over it. You know, and that's what I'm saying. People need to understand it's going to be uncomfortable, and we're going to have some conversations like that, but we'll get over it and we can move forward. But we've got to engage first and make that happen. So that's what we're doing. We're trying to make those conversations happen. We're asking people today. I mean, go and identify. That's why I'm going to take Mr. Fred Townsend and Ashanti Washington, and I'm going to take them and get on the road. And we're going to show people how this happens, because how God divinely has orchestrated us to be in relationships with people way outside of ourselves and the people like us. You know, he's building the universal family, and we need to be a part of that.
Well, and the other part of the faith question is they'll know we are Christians by our love. So often we see the opposite of love, and we feel helpless. We see hatred, we see the division, and we wonder, most people really want to be a part of the problem. There are people that are happy not doing anything to help, but most people really want to be a part of the solution. So how do we love better and more out loud?
Oh, it's well, I think the first thing we've got to do is determine to love better, you know. And so that's why there's so much education, because like you're saying, and I'm telling you, as you travel the country, there are a lot of lovely people in America. I mean, when I hear people downing America, I really I get so upset now, because I tell them, I've been to every state. I know the people. Have you met them? You know, when you start talking about them, because there are a lot of people who really do have a desire to love. And so I'm really, I told someone, I said, all the stuff that we do in public education, I said, I could give more public education and create a better environment if I spent all my money on buses and airplanes and took students in from one place and just took them on a tour around the country. And that's really what I think the essence is. If people started moving around, they'd see more people. They'd find people like Beth Townsend. They would find people who just care about people. I mean, that's what's most phenomenal. Everybody sits inside their bubbles and they don't understand. And they know the people that they hate. And a lot of times they're people right in their family, you know, in their family, in their town. Those are the people they grew up with. And so they have this inside them, this idea that there's hate out there and there's only hate and everybody's hating. There are lots of people out there who are loving, who can set the model. And once they begin to show that love, then I think people will be the virus, and we will begin to infect other people with that same love. And so that's what be the virus. We need to be the virus. You know, we think virus is just a bad thing, but we should be infecting people because we are infectious. You know, when that love is contagious, it really is contagious if we really start showing it. And so that's what I'm doing as I go out. And I've got stories that I could tell you forever about people I met in states that I might have met walking into a McDonald's, sitting down, eating breakfast, engaging them, and just got the heart connection. And so that's what we got to do. And that's what we're going to try to train people on how to begin connecting with people. We've met a lot of people. We've lived next door to a lot of people, but we've probably connected with few. And that's what we're going to try to do.
That's so true. Okay, I'm going to ask you one more question because our time has flown by, but you know what your purpose is. I know what my purpose is. There's a lot of people out there that they wish they had some divine appointment where God said, okay, here's your telegram. Go check the mail. I've got a letter to you. What do you say to people that don't feel a sense of purpose and they really wish they knew what God put them on this earth to do?
Well, I think the first thing is, you know, because especially if they would seek God first. I mean, because really he's the only one who can make you understand. And I did this with my high school students. I said, I don't think I found my purpose till I was in my 40s, you know? So I'm an old man now. And I said, so you don't have to rush it, but you do have to ask God and begin seeking it, because when I look back, I can see how he had my purpose, laid out. I can see that clearly now. Okay. So I'm 57 now. I said, so as a teenager, as a young person, the question you want to ask yourself is, God, will you show me my purpose? Can I begin to make sense of these things that are happening in my life now and how they work for your purpose that you have for me? And so I think that that's the basic thing. And, but for people who don't understand, and here's the great thing, and so everybody can hear this. So the great thing is, for that person who doesn't know God, guess what? He still got purpose for you.
Yeah.
And you don't know this now, but this thing that you're doing, that where you're disobedient and not doing the thing, whatever, he's working that stuff in too. And so when you come to your acknowledgement of the purpose he has for you, you'll see how it worked. And so the best advice would be press into God and begin asking him. But know this, and this is a very positive thing for young people, that regardless of what you're thinking about right now, God has a purpose and a plan for you. And you can, though you're out of his will, perhaps doing some things, he's going to work this stuff into his purpose for you.
And the more you impart wisdom and I like to tell anybody, you can protect your purpose by choosing the narrow path and trying to surround yourself in people that are positive. And, one of the things that we can do to ensure purpose is to protect the path, and that's choose wisely. And I think that's an ageless principle.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It's great. Mm-hmm.
So, all right. People are going to want to find you, and we'll put the website on our. We'll share this video, but where can people find you and get involved in what you're doing?
EraseRaces.com is the website. At Erase Races is the Facebook page. And we're standing up next week our dynamic YouTube channel where we're going to have some educational and information videos. So you can find us on YouTube, and we'll have that out there next week. So start that. And we'll be doing 3 videos a week because of coronavirus. We'll be trapped inside. And so we've got nothing to do but make great videos of education and information.
Well, that's awesome. And you let us know, and we'll let our people know. So thank you so much. We're definitely going to do this again, because this is just great leadership information that we all need to learn more about. So I'm glad you're doing it, and I'm glad you're teaching me, and we can share that with others. So we're going to change the world.
Thank you. I really want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to do that. And I'll be working with you for sure.
That sounds great. Thank you so much. We'll talk soon, and we're going to post this, and lots of people get to watch it.
Thank you.
All right. Stay well. See you later.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.